is happening, everybody? My name is Beth and welcome back to Everyday Spooktober. Now in today's video, it has taken me some time, but we are reviewing the second film of the Hostel franchise. Now, just a little bit of backstory before we get in. This video is highly just inspired by Possessed by Horror. If you guys don't know who she is, she's a really good horror film reviewer. I'm sure you guys have heard of her, but I really enjoy her videos, and I saw her do like a ranking tier of the Hostel movies, and as she was ranking them, I was like, I feel like I haven't seen Hostel 2 before when she was talking about them, so I immediately went onto YouTube and I rented the movie out and decided to watch Hostel 2. And then when I was watching the movie, I was like, hang on a sec, I've seen this bit before, and I definitely have seen Hostel 2 before. It's just been a very long time. So I rewatched it a few days ago, and obviously now I've come to review it because I just want to talk about the franchise, and Possessed by Horror kind of inspired this video. Let's just get into Hostel 2. Well, let's be real here. I'm aware that like years ago when the first Hostel came out, it was like a big thing. People were terrified, people were disgusted, it was awful. I think it got banned in a few countries. I don't know where, so I'm not going to name any places because I don't know. But I know Hostel was like a big hit, specifically the first one. And I think the first Hostel is so well done. I think like in my opinion too, like I guess it kind of plays off like fear for some people. Like for me, like traveling to a country like with minimal people who don't know the language and like there being issues, that kind of scares me. And I know it's a lot of like scary, it's like a scary scenario for a lot of people who maybe traveled and don't understand languages and where to go, and they need help and no one speaks English. Like that in itself I think is horrific. So I think this idea of a horror film is a very, very cool and interesting idea. Like I said, I think the first Hostel, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's a very strong film. It's awful, it's off-putting, it's disturbing, it's a great movie, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, I've seen the second years ago and I've seen the third. The third I'm not going to review because I've seen it and it wasn't great, and I don't want to dive into this franchise because I don't have a ton to say about it. I think it's a very mid franchise. I think the first one was great in itself, and then from there they kind of went downhill. So with this second one, I don't think it was that well done. The only sort of difference with this one is we kind of get into more of the like world of people buying women and then sort of paying money, like rich people paying money to have these women in a room and do whatever they want to them, and in the end they eventually have to just sort of kill them. So there was a new sort of idea, presented in this franchise, which I thought was interesting. It kind of explores the world of sort of like like women slavery and things like that. Like it kind of explores that world. It was giving me kind of like Taken vibes of where all these guys overseas kind of take women and then they like pay to have them be prostitutes, etc. Like it was giving me that same vibes. And personally, when I was when I was rewatching it, I could barely remember anything. But when I was rewatching it, I was thinking, so are we gonna care more when these women are getting tortured? Because I mean, I'm a woman. Do I relate to them? Is there more at stake here? Because these women's are like victims, and they're, in the first one, it's very much insinuated like the guys are going after these women, and the women obviously end up tricking them into getting into this hostel and then being killed or whatever. But like in this one, it was kind of like, do we care more now that they're women? If I'm quite honest with you, I don't think it has any more severity than it does in the first one. I think because the first one was such a fresh new idea, it was good in itself. I genuinely think like that, number one, every girl in this and the kills were pretty boring. There was nothing that was that creative or different or intense. I think they played it safe a little bit, especially maybe because it's women that are like killing. I don't think they put the hostile sort of twist and intensity on this film like they have done with the previous. So I was really disappointed. I was really expecting brutal, disgusting torture kills, And I mean, when you come to a Hostel film, that's what you're signing up for. That's what I want to see, at least as like a viewer of horror and this franchise. I want to see some brutal kills. I don't care if they're women, I don't care if they're a man, I don't care whoever they are. Like, I want some brutal kills. And like, it was very weak in the sense of like, it felt like more as if we were like getting into like the teeny bopper drama of the women rather than actually just get into the nitty gritty of stuff. I think the whole aspect of like them like buying people to torture, like the rich people are buying people to torture, again giving me kind of like Purge vibes, Taken vibes in that sense. I like that idea, but it was like, it felt like we were like setting up this really intense idea and thought of like, people are buying you, they're betting on you, they pay all this money to have you in a room, they've got all the tools, all the equipment to torture you. And I mean, like, we don't see like hardly any of it. So like, at the end of the day, I do think that this second film was a big letdown. It did not live up to the first one, and there was just a lot of plot holes, and they made it a bit more comedic. And I mean, like, if you guys have been following this channel, you know that I don't do horror comedy. I don't enjoy horror comedy because I don't see the funny in it. It's like, I want this to be dead serious, disgusting, disturbing, haunting. And they start bringing comedy aspects into it. I think the main character, Beth, like how at the end she ends up getting away and surviving because she has loads, her family has inherited her loads of money. I thought that was so dumb. And then she, like, the guy who's like going to kill her, she like ends up chopping off his, and like, yeah, he obviously suffers, but I don't know, it felt like an extremely low budget, like, boring film. Not a lot happened. The torture sequences weren't right until the end, and it's kind of like when you've seen the original and the first one, which is a very good story, a very good plot, and a very good film, you expect it to be kind of embedded throughout, because if you just have people waiting to see the torture scenes right at the end, people are going to lose interest, and that is exactly what happened when I watched it. So, unfortunately for me, I mean, the third one for me is like 20 times worse than this. Like I said, I'm not getting into it because it's not worth my time to explore. It's already rated on IMDb. I watched it months ago, but obviously you're welcome to go check out my IMDb. It's linked to my YouTube profile. But yeah, Hostel Part 2, not great. It wasn't any better now that there was women in it. I think they could have gone a completely different route and made it as disturbing as the first one, if not more. But they really didn't take advantage of the characters and the sexuality of them. I think they could have done it more in like a horrifying and disturbing aspect, but they didn't. So I'm really upset with how this turned out. Like I said, Hostel 1 is like a great movie in my eyes. I loved it. I think it's entertaining, it's disturbing, it's so solid. But it feels like the second and the third were just a cash grab because they knew that if people knew what was up for grabs in the first one, they knew that people would go and watch the sequel, and as it goes on, like, they would know people would keep coming back because they know what's in store for this franchise. So, like I said, pretty disappointed with this film. I rated it 4 out of 10, which is not the best. Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's an awful film. It still has like the same kind of vibes of like a Hostel movie, but like I said, I wanted something brutal. Like, if you're doing a sequel, and I mean, I know the whole cliche horror trope around here is like sequels are just trash, like you can never top an original. It's been done before in other films, but yeah, it's a shame that they couldn't even live up to the hype of the first one in this one. So yeah, that was sort of my review of this film. I hope you guys enjoyed. Do not forget to subscribe, and I will see you on my next review.